Welcome, boys and girls. Costin here with a discussion about Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch 2, which they just announced. And with that announcement came also the price point for games on the platform. Now, the price is so ridiculous that it's not only going to have extremely negative consequences for anyone that's looking to play Nintendo games, but also for gamers as a whole. Because if Nintendo can do this, then other companies are going to be looking at this. They're going to be saying, well, if they can do it, we should be able to do it. It's a bit ridiculous how so many companies think, oh, the big AAA companies can do this. Why shouldn't we do this? And surprisingly, in a lot of cases, it actually doesn't work out for smaller developers when they overprice their games. But make no mistake, if the standard game pricing is going to go up from $60 to $80 or $70 on average, that is going to have extremely negative consequences. Not just for people looking to buy games, by the way, but also for developers, for expectations from developers, CEOs. It's going to get pretty damn ridiculous. It's already very ridiculous, some of the requirements that CEOs and stockholders, investors have of certain game developers, but it's going to get far worse on this subject. So you're not just looking at consequence of how much a game is going to cost, but you're also going to be looking at how games are developed and what kind of decisions are made with regards to that. So let's take a look at the situation. From PC Gamer, Nintendo Switch 2 specs, $450 price tag. I doubt this is going to be $450 at launch, to be clear. I would probably expect more along the lines of over $1,000 for at least the first few months that it comes out. And that might just only be in the United States. When you're looking at Europe, you're looking at other countries, it might even be bigger than that. It's actually quite absurd. Scalping is certainly going to be a factor. Limited stock is probably going to be another factor because they're using an NVIDIA chip. And if we've seen anything from NVIDIA as of late is how stingy they can be with stock, and I do wonder if that's going to affect Nintendo, or if it's going to be a Nintendo plan. Anyway, so a bigger 1080p LCD screen, 4K support. Okay, let me explain something about 4K. There's no freaking way that this console is going to do 4K native gaming. Sure, there's AI, there's all kinds of technologies, and it does make me wonder if NVIDIA's recent moves over the last couple of years have had a lot to do with the launch of this console, at least in the gaming sphere. Because we know for certain that there are things that they've done because of this console. For instance, RTX HDR exists because of the Switch 2. That's one of the things that you can thank Nintendo for in a positive way. So the PC Gamer does go over what we know the specs. We actually don't know the specs. We don't know the performance. We don't know how it's going to be. We just know storage, 256 gigabytes of storage. Well, that's probably not going to be enough. But anyway, so the screen grows from 6.3 inches to 7.9 inches and an upgrade from 720p to 1080p resolution. And the screen now supports 120 Hz refresh and HDR. That's very, very relevant because of what I just mentioned about NVIDIA and RTX HDR. So that's probably something they have to do with. But yeah, larger screen, LCD panel tech, new dock has 4K output and cooling fan. Chassis is larger but no thicker than before. Internal storage upgraded. Micro SD express memory card reader. Detachable controllers now have mouse functionality, a bit interesting. No details on CPU and GPU. So that's what PC Gamer has on the subject, and they do also mention a kind of upgrade for 32 gigs to 256 gigs, and some of the information that's been shared out. So according to analysis, it's built on Samsung 8nm tech and is related in GPU terms to NVIDIA's Ampere or RTX 30 series GPU. It will get 1500 CUDA cores, which is fewer than the 2500 CUDA cores in an RTX 3050. But it's a bit questionable to try and judge things based on, apples to apples, right? Because it's not apples to apple with regards to this. But of course, this is not really the controversy. The controversy comes over here from IGN, and I suppose it's appropriate that I use IGN for this. So Mario Kart World isn't the only Nintendo Switch 2 game that costs $80. Now, $80 is already a ridiculous price point, even for Mario. I get it. Mario is very popular. Anyone who's a gamer has probably played a Mario game to an extent or another. But some Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games do as well, so paying the price. So a Switch 2 Edition of a game that goes beyond backward compatibility. So they're talking about the improvements over here. They're also talking multiple display modes, such as quality mode, which runs at 60 FPS in 4K when docked. It's not really 4K, I don't believe that, or 1080p at 60 when and handheld, and performance mode, or 120 FPS in 1080p when docked, or 120 FPS in 720p in handheld mode. All modes support HDR. Again, emphasizing the impact that NVIDIA has with regards to RTX HDR. But here's the thing. We have listing of prices thanks to Walmart. So we know the prices we're going to get. So Kirby, $80. And not just $80, probably 80 euros over here in Europe. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Nintendo Switch Edition, $70. Super Mario Party Jamboree, $80. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, $80. So you're not just talking here about one game, right? But multiple games. But perhaps something to blow some of is the upgrade that Nintendo will offer to existing owners of these games on its Nintendo Switch. However, Nintendo has yet to reveal how much an upgrade pack costs. We do know some upgrade packs, like the upgrade to Switch 2 Edition of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, will be included in a Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack membership. And this is the same membership that gives Switch owners access to online features and the classic library. So people who already own games on the current Switch are going to have to pay extra to get access to the Switch 2 editions. If you're buying them new, you're looking at $70 in the case of Breath of the Wild, which has been out for a while. It's worth pointing out, Breath of the Wild is not a new game, right? It's not a recent game necessarily either. So it is not too old, too ridiculously old, but we're talking about a 2017 game that's $70. Like, I personally thought for many years that Call of Duty was crazy with the kind of price point that it was going, but it's Call of Duty. But here you have Nintendo deciding pretty much that if you're buying a game that's out for 8 years and just buying a Switch 2 edition, you're paying $70. And if you're buying more recent titles, you're paying $80. And again, if Nintendo does this, if Nintendo gets away with this kind of behavior, you're going to start seeing more and more and more titles going for $80, maybe even more. Some people have talked about like how a physical edition, like the $80 cost might just be for physical editions, and how if you want a physical edition, I'm sure, I understand many people don't necessarily care about a physical edition nowadays, right? It's just convenience buying online. But if you may want a physical edition, you may have to pay $90. I'm just pointing out, it is insane. It is ridiculous. There's always going to be the argument, well, inflation and game prices have stayed the same for many years. There's a fair argument in that, but here's my counter-argument. It's one thing to have $60 priced games when the gaming market was significantly smaller. The gaming market is gigantic at the moment. So you have a far bigger market. It means games sell more copies. Sure, game development has increased in costs. We've had inflation. We've had the pandemic. We have all the issues that are happening right now, even tariffs. That's its own discussion that I might go for on the subject, especially if we're going to see some kind of quote-unquote tariff on services or taxes on services in the European Union. That might be a topic of discussion in its own right. But suffice to say, there's reasons why prices should increase, but there's also plenty of reasons why prices shouldn't increase. Because again, the market is bigger. These companies make bank. It's not like a lot of these companies are struggling to break even or something like that. When they fuck up is when they pour hundreds of millions of dollars in games that sell very poorly. Concord is a perfect example of that. and then they don't get their money back. That's, those situations do exist. But with, a Mario game is always going to sell very well. It's not like Nintendo is struggling financially as a company. You got to always look at the situation of an individual company, not just like, oh, what's the overall situation in the market? So to give you an idea, Nintendo's net income is like in the ballpark of $3 billion. That net income. That's not their total revenue. Their total revenue is $13 billion. So they're spending a lot of money, but they're also making a lot of money. So this isn't the question like, oh, we're struggling with the costs, etc. No, they're making bank. And they're going to make bank. They would have made bank anyway with $60, but they're just looking to get as much money as possible from this. And look, I admit, I don't care what Nintendo does, right? I'm not interested in Nintendo games. I have a lot of issues with the way Nintendo has handled things for years. But what I do care about, and what I think everyone should care about, is the impact it's going to have on gaming as a whole. That's my perspective. Kostin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.